Welcome to the last session of Chapter 5, Laws of Motion. And today we will be discussing remaining problems from exercises. Coming to question 5.16, two masses 8 kg and 12 kg are connected at the two ends of a light inextensible string that goes over a frictionless pulley. Find the acceleration of the masses and the tension in the string when the masses are released. So here we have a system of two masses, as you know, the masses 8 kg and 12 kg, and here we have solved such a question earlier with taking masses m1 and m2. So here you can use that equation directly, or you can solve by framing the force equation for the two bodies by considering their free body diagrams separately. Okay, so here 12 kilogram mass is more, so the 12 kilogram object will be coming down and 8 kilogram object will be going up. Here 12 kilogram, it's more than that 8 kilogram. 12 is greater than 8, because of larger mass it will be coming down. Okay, now we will use the free body diagram. On 12 kilogram, its weight is acting downwards, and its tension on the string is acting in the upward direction. Since the net force is in downward direction, because the object or the body is moving down, so net force is in downward direction. So we write the force equation as m1g minus t is equal to that provides it's an acceleration m1a. So m1g minus t is equal to m1a. That is the equation for the 12 kilogram object. And for 8 kilogram object, its weight also is acting in downward direction, tension in the upward direction, but it is going up. So net force is in upward direction. So our equation becomes T minus M2G. Net force is in upward direction. So T minus M2G equal to M2A. So the two equations we have to solve. Just adding the two equations, tension will get cancelled, and we will have the acceleration as m1g minus m2g by m1 plus m2, or m1 minus m2 into g divided by m1 plus m2 will be the expression for acceleration. So substituting the values, will get, taking g to be 10, will get the acceleration as 2 meter per second square. Then substituting the value of this acceleration in any of the two equations, we'll get the tension to be 96 Newton. Or you can solve the equation. It's better if you are using this method, if in any of the two equations you can substitute and get the value of tension, you will get it as 96 Newton. Now coming to next question, 5.17. A nucleus is at rest in the laboratory frame of reference. Show that if it disintegrates into smaller nuclei, the products must move in opposite directions. So disintegration, I think I have told you the process of radioactivity in one of the earlier lessons, classes, I think we have discussed. When the radioactivity is going on, that means a heavy nucleus will be splitting into lighter ones. During the process of radioactivity, a heavy nucleus will be splitting into lighter ones. And in that process, it's given that heavy nucleus is at rest and it disintegrates into lighter nuclei, and the products should move in opposite directions. That's what it's given. So if the products are moving, here we have to apply the law of conservation of momentum. So total momentum before disintegration should be equal to total momentum after disintegration. So initial momentum of the system, that parent nucleus, it is at rest. So its initial momentum before disintegration will be equal to 0. Now we are assuming m1 and m2 be the masses after the disintegration, and v1 and v2 the velocities of the two daughter nuclei. That is the usage in radioactivity. In +2 you will be studying radioactivity. Okay, so before disintegration we say parent nucleus. After disintegration, when it splits into two new nuclei, we call them as daughter nuclei. So v1 and v2 are the velocities of the daughter nuclei with the masses m1 and m2, so that the total momentum after disintegration, it becomes m1 v1 plus m2 v2. But according to the law of conservation of momentum, total initial momentum should be equal to total final momentum. So equating m1 v1 plus m2 v2 will be equal to 0. So when we write for v1, we'll just see what is v1. We'll have a negative sign there. So it is that negative sign which shows that v1 and v2 are in opposite direction. So we proved that v1 and v2 are in opposite direction, which means that the two daughter nuclei, they should move in opposite direction. Now coming to the next question, question 519. A shell of mass 0.02 kilogram is fired by a gun of mass 100 kilogram. If the muzzle speed of the shell is 80 meter per second, what is the recoil speed of the gun? So masses of gun and shell are given. You are asked to find the recoil speed. We can directly use the equation, that is mv by m minus mv by m. Here speed only asked, so no need of considering that sign. So either you can apply the same equation or we can follow the steps. Before firing, the total momentum is 0. Final momentum, here they have already taken that negative sign, or if you put the positive sign, here if you keep positive sign in the final answer, you will have a negative sign. That's what. Anyway, what we need to find is only the magnitude speed. So recoil velocity, this equation, the steps and all we have already explained in theory. So we have the recoil velocity to be mv by m. So the small letter m into v about the shell, and it is 0.02 into 80 divided by, for the gun it is 100 into the 1000 comes due to that shells, that masses are to be converted to kilogram. So we have the answer as 0.016 meter per second. So simple question, direct application. You can use the equation which you have studied already. Okay. Now a stone of mass 0.25 kilogram tied to the end of a string is whirled round in a circle of radius 1.5 meter with a speed of 40 revolutions per minute in a horizontal plane. What is the tension in the string? What is the maximum speed with which the stone can be whirled around if the string can withstand a maximum tension of 200 Newton? So first question is, what is the tension in the string? So here the frequency we can find from the data given, that is, it's given speed, it is 40 revolutions per minute. That means in 1 minute there are 40 revolutions. That means in 60 seconds. That means, in 1 minute means 60 seconds. In 60 seconds there are 40 revolutions. So how many revolutions are there in 1 second? That is 40 by 60. That is 2 by 3. So that is the frequency. Here frequency, it is represented by the letter n. So frequency is 2 by 3. Rotations per minute means we can say it is hertz. Okay. Now we are asked to find the tension in the string. How to find the tension in the string? Here what we need to use the logic is, the tension is providing the required centripetal force. So tension, to find the tension, what we need to find is the centripetal force. You know the centripetal force equation is mv square by r. In terms of angular frequency or angular velocity, the equation is mr omega square. So we already found the frequency. In terms of frequency, you know, omega is 2 pi nu or 2 pi f we have discussed. Okay, so you can substitute that and find omega, then substitute that omega in this equation. So by doing the substitution, we have 0.25 into 1.5, that is m and r, and here comes that omega. So final answer, we are getting it to be 6.57 Newton. See, this is the tension when it makes 40 revolutions in 1 minute. Okay, now we are asked to find the maximum speed with which the stone can be whirled if the string can withstand a maximum tension of 200 Newton. So T max is 200 Newton. So mv square by r cannot go above 200 Newton. So when v is equal to v max, with maximum speed, if it is whirled, then T becomes T max. T max is how much? 200 Newton. So that's what we need to. So rearranging that, so we have T max is equal to mv max square by r. Rearranging that equation, v max will get as root of T max into r by m. That is equal to root 200 into 1.5 by 0.25. So root of 1200, which is 34.64 meter per second. So the maximum speed of the stone is 34.64 meter per second. Now question 522. If in exercise 521, the speed of the stone is increased beyond maximum permissible value and the string breaks suddenly, which of the following correctly describes the trajectory of the stone after the string breaks? So it's given T max is 200 Newton. So if we increase the speed beyond that 34.64 meter per second, surely the string will break. The question is in what direction it will go. The first option, stone moves radially outward. Second option, stone flies off tangentially from the instant the string breaks, and the stone flies off at an angle with the tangent whose magnitude depends on the speed of the particle. You know, at each moment in the circular motion, the object is having its velocity along the tangent. So when the string breaks, what is the direction of velocity at that moment? In that direction, the stone will be moving. So each moment the velocity is along the tangent. So after breaking the string, the stone will be moving along the tangential path. So the option B is correct. Now coming to the last question, question 523. Explain why a horse cannot pull a cart and run in empty space. Second one, passengers are thrown forward from their seats when speeding bus stops suddenly. And third, it is easier to pull a lawnmower than to push it. And fourth one, a cricketer moves his hands backwards while holding a catch. So one by one we will discuss. A horse cannot pull a cart and run in empty space. You know, as per Newton's third law, when we run, not only horse, everyone, when we run or walk, we are exerting with, that means our legs are exerting a force on the ground, which comes as the action, and in reaction to it, the ground exerts a force on our legs in the forward direction. While walking or running or whatever we are doing with the legs, no, running, jumping, whatever it is, so we are pushing the ground backwards and the ground pushes us forward. Making use of that reaction only we are walking or running. So the horse case also like that. In empty space, it cannot have an action, then only it can have a reaction. So that is why the horse, it cannot pull a cart or even run in empty space. Second one, passengers are thrown forward from their seats. The reason is this, that means when the bus suddenly comes to rest, the lower portion of the body which is in contact with the bus, it comes to rest suddenly with the bus, but the upper portion still continue the state of motion according to first law, or we can say due to inertia. As a result, the upper body is thrown forward. Okay, so it's due to inertia of motion. Now the third question, it is easy to pull a body or than to push it. That's the case. So we'll consider the two situations separately. What happens when we pull a body and what happens when we push a body. So here it's given a body is being pulled. So this shows that pulling force. This is that pulling force with which we pull that object. You know, this force is in this and all very familiar situations in our daily life when we pull some objects, okay, in a slanting direction. So you can resolve that force into two components. Here, this force F cos theta and this component F sin theta. You know, when we pull the object, that F sin theta component is coming in upward direction. You know, for the body, its weight is acting in the downward direction. So with the presence of this F sin theta, it is acting in upward direction now. The effective force in the downward direction is decreasing because the net force in the vertical direction becomes mg minus F sin theta. So effective force in the downward direction, it decreases with the presence of that F sin theta in the upward direction. Okay, so effective force in the downward direction decreases. So we need to apply only a small force in pulling. When we discuss the case in pushing a body, when we push, so we are pushing the object in this direction. Okay, this is the direction of pushing the object. So here also we are resolving that force into two components. So one in this direction and the other in this direction. So here one component is coming in downward direction. In downward direction, you can see already mg is there in that downward direction. So here the effective downward force is increasing. When we push an object, effective downward force is increasing. So we need to apply more force. That is why it is generally said it is easy to pull an object than to push it. Okay, so while pushing an object, effective downward force increases. While pulling an object, effective downward force decreases. Now coming to last part, that is D part. While holding a catch, the cricketer lowers the hands. Why? That can be explained with Newton's second law of motion. We know that second law, as per second law, F is equal to delta P by delta T, or it can be written as F is equal to M into delta V by delta T. Whatever it is, what we can conclude is F is inversely proportional to delta T. That means the impact of the ball on the hand, it is inversely proportional to delta T. So if the man or the cricketer, if he takes the catch suddenly, the impact due to that change in momentum, that means when the ball is means caught by the cricketer, it is coming to rest, means there is a big change in momentum within a short interval of time. Okay, so that impact of force will be more. And if he is lowering the hand, that means holding the ball in his hands, he is lowering the hands, means that delta T is more. So here also the ball is coming to rest, the same change in momentum is there, but the time taken for that change in momentum is more. So since that F is inversely proportional to delta D, that impact of force will be less. So less pain will be there for the cricketer on his hands. So to safeguard his fingers or hands from injury, the fielders, they usually do like this. While taking catch, they lower their hands so that the impact of force will be less. So with that, we conclude today's lesson and that chapter. Thank you.